anyway, I think, and I see Carol's photograph anyway. And I think with that, we're pretty much good to go. We probably should get started since we've got lots to do today, or we'll have lots of questions for you anyway, I guess I should say it that way. And first of all, I guess is welcome to everybody. Thank you for being here, for taking some time to talk with us and for sharing your views and your insights, which are extremely valuable to us. I think it might be helpful if we start just with a quick round of introductions, and I'll do it maybe as I see your names on my screen. I'll just call, and if you can just say who you are and what organization you're from, then we at least know who we're talking to. That would be helpful. Marisa, right now you appear at the top for me. Do you want to start?
Yes, thank you, Bonnie. I'm Marisa Mehta from Fit Consulting, and I'm part of the Gecko project.
Thank you. Janek, you're also up next to me.
Hello, everyone. I'm Yannick Busse from UITP. I'm working in the Mobility Governance Unit within UITP, and I'm the project coordinator of Gecko.
Thank you. Thomas.
All right, I'm unmuted. That's good. So Thomas Geyer. I work for the Transport Authority of Greater Vienna, so the city of Vienna and the 2 federal states around it. And from there, I'm seconded to EMTA, which is the platform of the larger transport authorities in Europe. And I guess I'm here in my EMTA capacity, at least, yes. I guess, yeah.
I think that's what I signed you up as, yes, thank you. Nicolas?
Hi, so I'm Nicolas Frazier. I work for Communauto, which is one of the biggest car sharing operators, mainly operating in Canada with almost 4,000 vehicles. And also 200 vehicles in Paris. I'm in charge of the development and public relations for Europe, so mainly France, actually, not so much outside of France. And I've been working a lot on the new Loi d'orientation des mobilités, and I'm involved in some working groups with many different stakeholders like PTA, PTO, but also private players. To work on how can we adapt with that new regulation. So we have the regulation, now we try to adapt to it, and yep. That's the job that we're doing now with Gecko, and I'm very happy to share the experience in France here.
Thanks for being here. Michael, you're up next.
Yes, hello, good morning from sunny, you can see it, very sunny Bremen. And I'm working with the city of Bremen. I'm senior project manager for sustainable mobility here and have been involved in a number of European and international projects.
Thank you. Renata, you're up next.
Oh, okay. Hello, good morning. So I'm an urban planner and territorial civil engineering, transport engineer, and I work in Europe by the moment in the intelligent mobility team. But my previous background in terms of work has been the local authority in deputy mayor for mobility, housing and local developments. And my areas of expertise, well, at the moment, besides low emission zones that we had, is new forms of mobility, intelligent mobility, and well, business cases, etc.
Thank you.
Okay.
Marusha, I have you up next. Marusha.
Hi everyone. Yes, here. So yeah, my name is Marusha. I'm here on behalf of Corte. We are partners in the Gecko project.
Thank you. Pasquale.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Pasquale Cancellara. I work for Policy Network as a project manager, and we are involved in the Gecko project as leaders on communication activities.
Thank you. And Valerio.
Good morning, my name is Valerio Lubello. I'm postdoctoral research at Bocconi University in comparative public law. My expertise areas are mobility and renewable energies.
Thank you. Maciej.
Hello from Warsaw. My name is Maciej Wnorczak. I work in Public Transport Authority in Warsaw. and I'm representing the city of Warsaw in this project. In my everyday work, I'm dealing with GIS solutions in Public Transport Authority.
Okay, thank you. Anastasia.
Hello, my name is Anastasia Tsvetkova. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at Åbo Akademi University in Finland, and I'm also representing one of the partners in Gecko project.
Thanks, Anastasia. Gayang, are you still there and still in transit?
Hi, okay, I've gotten into a bit quieter spot. I was just about to head up, but I'll just do my introduction first. Hi, hi. So I'm Gayang from UITP, and I'm based in Hong Kong. And the reason of getting into Gecko is because for the CTE, so the Center for Transport Excellence, we have a project coming. Well, actually, we're currently now doing the project on on-demand mobility. So it's been something we've been in planning. So yes, I'm looking forward for this workshop.
It fits well. Thanks, Gayang. Daniele?
Hello to everybody, I'm Daniele Cedere. I'm responsible for transport distribution for a private company, Havi. We do distribution in inner city globally in Europe, and I'm responsible for the Italian market.
Thank you. Karel.
Good morning, Genoa. Good morning from Tel Aviv. My name is Karel Martens. I'm a professor at the Technion Israel Institute of Technology. I'm an urban planner by training. Most of my academic work is around justice and transport. And it's a semi-holiday here, so I'm kind of multitasking, and I'm also a little bit ill, so I hope to be a little bit enough focused to contribute. Apologies.
We appreciate you being here. Thanks, Karel. Bronwyn.
Hello, hi. Oh, sorry. That's the dogs that we dog sit on a Wednesday. Anyway, hi, Bronwyn Thornton, Walk 21, representing walkers, users, participants in the public space, and bringing that perspective to the discussions. Thanks.
Thanks, Bronwyn. Michaela?
Hi, hello everybody. Michaela, I'm a transport and mobility advisor at FIT. I'm specialized in energetics and evaluation of national and international impact evaluation of sustainable mobility, transport, and integrated strategies.
Thank you. Thanks, Michaela. And Pedro, you're the last one.
Good morning, I'm Pedro Gouveia from the Policy Network. I'm Senior Policy and Project Manager, and we're participating happily in Gecko. Good morning to everybody.
Thanks, Pedro. Okay, that's the group. It was sort of increasing as we were going through the introductions, but I think we got everybody. And we plan to spend most of the time today looking at some challenges that have been identified and trying to prioritize them around reaching a future, say, a positive scenario for 2040. Before we get there, that we promised to share some of the results that we've been working on or that we've achieved through Gecko so far. And Marisa will be doing that for us, looking at the compliance map and the regulations that have been collected, the 200 plus over the last couple of years. So Marisa, I'll turn it over to you.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So, hello everybody, I am Marisa Mehta from Fit Consulting, and in this presentation we will present the Competence Map, which is a tool we developed to show the results of the assessment of regulatory frameworks dealing with the introduction of new mobility services and technologies in the mobility field. So here a list of what we are going to see. First of all, we will see the objective addressed by the Competence Map. Then we will see the methodological approach followed to perform this assessment. And finally, we will see the competence map, which is already available on the Gecko website. So in Gecko, we performed the assessment of the capability of existing regulatory frameworks in enabling the implementation of innovative technologies and business models, while at the same time safeguarding adequate level of security, safety, data privacy, and social protection. Results of this assessment are displayed on the competence map. Now let's see how we perform this assessment. First of all, let's clarify what we mean by regulatory frameworks. We can say that we mean a set of binding and non-binding rules, but also initiatives, investments, policies related to each city, region, or country, so to each jurisdiction level. Componing the regulatory environment with which the introduction of each mobility solution has to deal with. So now that we have clarified what we are going to assess, let's take a brief look of how we did it. First of all, we identified 10 evaluation categories that are the main themes under which the regulatory frameworks are assessed. Then within each evaluation categories, we identified as a set of indicators to be selected for each specific mobility solution. And we quantified these indicators both through the help of the Gecko stakeholders, which through the questionnaires identified the key aspects to be regulated and assessed some excerpts from main regulations. So let me take this opportunity for thank you for that. But also by relying on already existing databases such as the OECD DataStat, the International Chamber of Commerce, and the World Economic Forum. This approach allowed us to assess not only the specific regulation, but also the regulatory environment in which each each specific regulation for each mobility solution fits. So for example, the World Economic Forum provides indexes like the legal framework's adaptability to digital business model, which necessarily influence the ability of a city or a region or a country to enable these new mobility services. Of course, in addition to these, we have also some more specific indicators. So for example, for connected automated vehicles, we have indicators such as the number of government-funded pilots or the level of safety required for pilots and road tests. So the next step was to understand within each evaluation category the weight to be assigned to each indicator. We did a round of interviews with Gecko stakeholders, so thank you again for that, and who helped us to assign this weight. So for example, if we are talking about data, referring to connected automated vehicles, is it more important the cybersecurity aspect or the data management? And is it the same if we are talking about, for example, mobility as a service? By performing this process for all of the 10 evaluation categories, we have been able to define an overall index that we call the regulation compliance that will be shown on the competence map. So now let's see briefly the functionalities within the competence map, so the set of features that the tool is able to provide. But let's first look at the database feeding the competence map. So we analyzed more than 220 regulations. We covered countries' regulations from regulatory frameworks from countries pertaining to all the macro areas in the world. On the right side, you can see the distribution of regulatory frameworks analyzed by mobility solutions. So the Competence Map is a regulatory and supportive tool for a practical synthesis of regulatory schemes, which show similarities and differences of different regulatory schemes that share the common goals of enabling new disruptive innovation in mobility. So the three functionalities provided by the Competence Map are the regulation competence, which is representative of the effectiveness of a city or a country in regulating the different aspects to adopt these new mobility solutions. Then we have the regulation readiness, which is another index which combines the regulation competence with different level of penetration of each mobility solutions. And then we also have the barriers, the entrance barriers, which provide a qualitative overview of the barriers that the introduction or deployment of these mobility services have to face to enter the market. But now let's see directly at the tool. Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the Gecko website, and you can see a brief description of the three functionalities, and here is the competence map. From these three boxes, you can select to see the regulation competence or the regulation readiness. The regulation competence is presented by making reference to both the city level and the country level. So what you can do is to select to visualize the regulation competence or also one of its evaluation category component. So you see that the competence map updated automatically, or you can also select the mobility solution relevant for this level, this jurisdiction level. And then you can also hover your mouse on a country or a city, and you will see this window that will provide you some information about the name of the country, the score obtained for the regulation compliance as an overall index, or the selected component, in this case cooperation. And then you will see also the regulatory, a brief description of the regulatory approach, and the name of the main regulatory text analyzed to perform the assessment. And finally, you will also be able to click on the URL here, and you will be directed to the main reference text, which is taking a bit of time. Okay, here it is. And okay, then you, in general, a higher value and a darker color of the RC or one of its component means that the regulatory framework is more effective in regulating the introduction or deployment of the mobility solution selected. And this is the same for the city level. Then you have also the regulatory readiness, and here you can select the penetration level, and then you will see that the map will update automatically. So if, for example, I increase the penetration level of drones, you will see that, for example, Tanzania is colored darker. That's because in this case we selected the social component of the regulatory readiness. And that's because, for example, Tanzania is using the drones to deliver medical supplies in remote areas. Then you have also the barriers. The barriers present a qualitative overview of the main barriers hindering the adoption or deployment of the selected mobility solution. These barriers are categorized by six themes, six categories that are political, economical, social, technological, legal, and environmental. And here you see a preview of the description of each barrier. If you want to see them, if you want to see the complete text, you can just select the theme, and you will see the full description. And you can here also select the mobility solution. And here also you can hover on the description, and you will see the solution to overcome this barrier and the best practice is if available. Finally, you will also, by clicking here, you will also find the guidelines to use the Competence Map in a short version, and also in a long version that can be downloaded. So that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Marisa. Does anybody have any questions about this? I mean, you're welcome to this. Marisa, is it already available for people to look at on the website?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's there for anybody that wants to take a look at, play with it and see how it works in relation to the topics that are particularly interesting to you. But does anybody have any questions for Marisa? Michael.
Can I just ask? Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Michael first, and then Renata. Yeah.
Yeah, the question, how do you deal, let's say, with updates, new insights, or especially regulations can change very quickly? We had such a case just recently with a law court sentence in Germany. So how do you deal with that, and how will you deal with updates beyond the lifetime of the Gecko project?
Yes, we are discussing about the maintenance of the tool. So we are checking if among our consortium is there some of us that would like to take this tool and maintaining it. If we analyze the new regulatory text or the updates, then we have this automatic assessment that is able to provide and to update the Competence Map starting from the assessment of the regulatory text, which is the only thing that is that needs the opinion of a stakeholder or a Gecko partner.
Okay, Renata, you had a question?
Yeah, well, just about the valuing of the indicators and criteria, you said that you met with the stakeholders, right, to assess the values. I just wanted to ask if they were attributed or if they were calculated. So basically, if you use multi-criteria analysis methods, or if it was just a simple in terms of what is the strongest one, what is the most important, and then that one has more value. So how it worked, just
yeah, we actually used exactly the multi-criteria analysis, and as I said, we combined both the evaluation from Gecko stakeholders, but also some quantitative indicators to take also in consideration, for example, aspects related to the infrastructure or others databases that provided the interviews made in a context of different fields. Like, for example, I made this example on the World Economic Forum providing an assessment of the legal framework adaptability to digital business model. In general, the opinion of the stakeholders have been quantified through a Likert scale. And then all of the indicators have been made comparable through the standardization method. And
okay,
yeah,
so but you used a simple multi-criteria then, so you didn't calculated the weights, right? Comparing.
Yeah.
We calculated.
We calculated the weights, and in order to define the weights, we also relied on the pairwise comparison done through the interviews that we conducted with some of the Gecko stakeholders.
Okay, maybe I'll contact you further just to know more. Okay,
my mail is I had the email in the last in my last slide.
Okay.
So yeah, please contact me if you have any comments or questions.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. You could follow up the conversation there.
Sure.
Thank you, Marisa. I will, let's see, can you there we go, give back the screen sharing, and I'll pass it over to Yannick, who is...
Bonnie.
Karel.
Yes, sorry, I raised my hand, but I'm not sure if you see this.
Ah, it didn't appear. Go ahead, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I had some trouble with my move to a headset. I have some questions about, so first of all, my daughter entered in the beginning, so I might have missed something, but I have some questions about the terminology. So one is you talk about mobility solutions. I think it's a problematic term. I don't think these are solutions. They are services at best. Whether they solve something for somebody is a very different matter. Yeah. So I would avoid that term giving automatically a positive framing to things maybe which are disastrous in some perspective. The other is I didn't understand the word compliance. I mean, I know what it means, but what is complying with what? It's very unclear to me.
Is compliant with the objective that a city or a country set for themselves. So, for example, if they have objectives in terms of employment or social aspects, or also from an environmental point of view, how much the regulatory framework enable the deployment of mobility solution that should help to get to the target that the countries of the cities fixed. But actually, the name of Competence Map is have been widely discussed. Is something that we have been established before the starting of the project, and then actually for example, Bonnie was suggesting to call it regulation map. So yeah, we could we keep call it Competence Map just to give a continuity with respect to what have been presented in the previous workshops.
Mm-hmm. Well, still not entirely clear to me, because I mean, does a mobility service match policy goals? Is that the purpose to map it?
I hate to do it. I'm sorry.
It's so confusing.
Now I take your point, Carol, and as you're asking questions that we've had sort of discussions about internally, and it's ongoing.
I understand. Yeah. So the message should just be: it's still not clear. It's not intuitive what you're presenting. Okay, so give that a thought.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly take your point about mobility services versus solutions, and we'll take this into the discussion. I can see Bronwyn in the comments agreeing with the concerns, which I appreciate. I would say this will go into our next consortium meeting, so that's input that we take as valuable and helpful. And I'm sorry to kill a conversation. I hate to do it, but we need to move on.
That's okay.
Okay. To what we're looking at today, which is you all received last week a short, we'll call a vision for 2040 that was developed by the project based on several other documents that we're looking at future scenarios. And this is sort of the focus that we have for today's session, is looking at how we get there, what are the challenges that need to be addressed in order to do that. And I'd like to give the screen over to Yannick for a few minutes just to describe sort of the background context and what we're going into today. So Yannick, if I can pass over to you. Looks like you've already got the screen, which is great.
Yes, thank you, Bonnie. You should be able to see the screen now.
We can.
I'll just maximize this. Okay. Oh, no. Here you go. Okay. So thank you all for joining this workshop today. I will give a bit of context about what we will be discussing and what we'll be working on until the end of this workshop. So the idea for today is basically the project will be working on a roadmap, which is which we've called at the moment the Adaptive Regulation Roadmap 2040. With this roadmap, what we want to do is to provide basically a plan with a set of challenges and actions that are needed to devise adaptive and anticipatory regulatory approaches, and also how we can identify new regulatory frameworks. So we want to set out basically a roadmap and implementation plan, you could say, with these types of challenges and actions, and those are two key terms that we'll come to into this workshop today. So the central aim of the roadmap is basically how can we foster, how can we have better regulation, how can we improve and enable adaptive and anticipatory regulations for new mobility. Here I come again to these terms of challenges and actions. So the roadmap is structured in a way of looking at where are we now. So in the case of what are the issues for today, in terms of what are the challenges in reaching the central aim of getting to better regulation, adaptive regulation for new mobility. Also kind of in the document will be a kind of a description of where we are now in terms of what are the project results we've been finding, what are the results we've been finding in the project. And that should take, and then the next step is looking at what we call the vision at the moment. Where do we want to go? So what will adaptive regulation, what could that enable us to reach then ultimately? And for that, we have produced this outline, this Gecko vision, as we called it then. And finally then, how can we get there? And these are a set of actions which could be answering to the challenges, or a set of actions separate from the challenges, where we set out what are the steps and what are the solutions basically to get to this vision of better and anticipatory adaptive regulation also. So what we did is we worked on this step here, this vision, this 2040 vision. And for this, we basically followed the structure of the EU Sustainable and Smart Mobility Strategy. And there are three main themes in there, basically. So to make all transport modes more sustainable, make sustainable alternatives widely available in a multimodal transport system, and putting in place the right incentives to drive the transition to zero emission mobility. That's the overall framework that we followed. And then we looked at, from the project consortium, what are the items that we wanted to fit into this, and how can we fill this vision, and where do we want to achieve, and where do we want to reach them by 2040. And for that, we used items from the European Commission. So I mentioned the strategy, also the Green Deal, but also other resources from the International Transport Forum or Arthur D. Little reports also. So that was all feeding into this, and this has been circulated, and this is also will be visible during the workshop as we're working and discussing today. What we also did is we sent to you already in advance through the form of a survey. Some of you or most of you have participated in this survey, where you were able to assess the challenges also. And so the starting point for this, just to give how we came up with this, was our Gecko project reports, where we also had contributions from stakeholders in previous workshops, in the previous online workshop, and also in the London workshop. This was a fundamental part into feeding into these project reports that we have made. And so we were able to use challenges that were set out in these reports, and these were then form the basis of the survey, which we shared with you. We received around 46 responses to this survey, and then the activity which we set out then was the challenges had to be prioritized along the lines of something that should be addressed immediately as a challenge, and something that has to be addressed directly, something to be addressed in the medium term, something which is a challenge which is not a priority at the moment, or a challenge which is an ongoing tension, or something that we have to live with and is difficult to find a solution for. And so for today then, we have taken those results from the survey, we have assessed this, and this is what we'll be working on today. So we want to, together with you, come to kind of a consolidated results of these challenges, and then we'll also have a discussion and some work about the corresponding actions and what matches with this then also. So that was a brief sort of context setting about what we'll be working on for our workshop. And then for you, Bonnie, if there's, I can hand over to you then to take it to the Miro board.
Yes, I will take that back then. Let's see. And show my screen. There we go. Somebody's doing some serious typing in the background. If you wouldn't mind muting yourself, whoever it is, that would be super. So I have shared here my screen, which may look a little bit overwhelming just looking at this all at once. Hang on, I'm just trying to, yeah, it's up here. Find the chat function and make sure I type this correctly. So I've just dropped into the chat the direct link to this board that I'm showing you. And it basically describes, or it is what Yannick was just describing to you, and this is going to be our task for the day, is working with this. And we were talking about this before, it looks a little bit overwhelming, but then we realized we're dealing with smart people, and I think you can figure this out when we explain it to you. So I'll just sort of talk through this. As Yannick described, we were looking at challenges that were identified through the course of the project. And we had, I think, 23 that we asked you as stakeholders to help us prioritize through the survey that we conducted last month. And as noted, these must be addressed immediately, medium term, not a priority, or it's something we simply have to live with. There's no way to get around it. So these were the 4 categories that we asked you to divide things into. As you know, we also in the survey asked which sector you represented, and so we tried to put this in as well so that we could understand if the priorities were different from the public sector, the private sector, and those we call other influencers, which are usually academics, sometimes consultancies or associations, that sort of thing that have maybe an indirect role. And so what we have in each row, and I'm just showing with my mouse, I think you can see, is everything in each row is the same, but we've just tried to put the priorities, we've showed the priorities for each group. So we have the same 23 challenges in each row, organized as they arrived for us for each of the different stakeholder groups. And just to explain the colors that we have here, anything that's marked, you can see this is challenge number 1, and I can also zoom in here to make this easier. Challenge number 1, the lack of willingness by many private sector actors to share data hinders cooperation with the public sector, was identified as a challenge by the public sector, the private sector, and other influencers as a challenge that needs to be addressed as a top priority. Interestingly, the other one that came out clearly for everybody was a large-scale shift away from private car ownership and use, which requires a major culture shift. We were pleased to see that everybody saw that as a top priority. It's obviously a massive challenge that needs to be addressed immediately and also in an ongoing basis. But you can see those were the only 2 that appeared for everybody for all 3 categories as an immediate or top priority, which was sort of interesting, or maybe we were a little bit surprised to see that there were comparatively few immediate priorities and a relatively high number of medium-term priorities, or not a priority at all in some cases. So we were interested to see some of the differences across here, looking from sector to sector. I should say, as Yannick pointed out, we had 46 respondents to the survey altogether. They were relatively balanced across the three sectors, and obviously we know this isn't representative, but we know that you as experienced people working in the fields, or let's say we put a high value on what you say, and so I would say we take this very seriously as to how things are set, understanding of course that it's not representative. But what we would like to do today, I'll just sort of give you the overview, is to try to, and again, when you're in here, you can see, I can see some people already are, you can use your mouse to scroll in and out as I'm doing. If you just click and you can move the board back and forth so you can see different aspects of it. And if I click over here, for example, we just put the vision in here, the 2040 vision, so that you have reference to it if you'd like to have it. On the other side, we've listed all of the challenges that were identified as immediate and second level priorities so that they're all here. And I should say as well, the ones that be marked in black, we were interested to see that there were significant differences across the sectors. So in the private or the public sector and the other sector, data sharing creates a privacy concern, was seen to be something that needs to be addressed immediately, whereas for the private sector, it was seen as simply an ongoing tension. So this is something we'd like to have a little bit of discussion about what that means, if we can maybe come to a consensus on where that should be placed. Is it simply an ongoing tension, or is there something that can or should be done? So yes, I can say just in general, I'll give you a moment to read this afterwards, but the black ones, as I said, were sort of our interesting observations that they were quite different. When some say in others influencers, not a priority for number 22, and the private sector says top priority. And the public sector says a medium priority. So it was interesting to see what the differences were indeed across the sectors. So just to come back to the overview, what we're trying to do, if I just click out a little bit, you can see the whole screen, that what we have here at the next row, we've called consolidated. And what we would like to do with that is to place all of these, so the challenges that are listed here, ideally place them here, come to an agreement among us about where they belong. And then the bigger task really is to try and identify some actions that could address the challenges that we placed, and particularly the ones that are seen as top priority. So what actions need to be taken? And some of them are really quite large when we consider a shift away from private car ownership, or a cultural shift, we'll call it. But this really was one of the key things that was identified both by the project and by you as stakeholders. So we need to talk about it. Again, sort of in the context of regulation, what can or should be done, what actions should be taken in order that we can, and I scroll back out again, start to work towards this goal for the vision for 2040. So I know this sounds like maybe a lot of information. Most of you, I think, have seen that I posted the link and the password to this Miro board in the chat. You can see some of you here, guest designer, guest maker, Carl is listed with his name, a guest thinker, that you're in here already. And I'd like to give you just maybe a moment to take a look at this. As noted, everything across one row is all of the identified challenges. I would say the focus belongs on the colored ones, as they seem to be the highest priority. And we'll give you maybe just a couple of minutes to scroll through there, look through. In case you don't have the link open, I will just place the board here. I know you need to have a microscope maybe to see the whole thing. Or maybe what I'll do is try and give a single row, so you should be able to see at least all of the challenges that have been identified. And I'll stop talking for a minute and just let you concentrate and take a look through the board. Or questions, if you have them, feel free out loud or in the chat, either is fine.
Just also to mention, I'm not sure if this was mentioned yet, but we are also recording this workshop. The recording won't be going anywhere else. We're just using this for internal purposes, but we just mentioned also that this is being recorded.
Thank you for saying that, Yannick.
So Bonnie, just to confirm, the coloured stickers indicate some ambiguity in response. So that's where we should focus. Is that what you're saying?
Actually, the colored stickers indicate quite a bit of unity across the sectors. So if you look, for example, at number 16, medium term for, in fact, all three sectors. So these are the ones that are relatively clear. The black ones are the one where there is ambiguity.
Okay.
Bonnie, it's Bronwyn. Just to clarify what the end goal here is, I'm afraid with trying to read it and trying to listen to you, either what are the 2 or 3 things we have to do, or what is the end goal as we scan it? Please, sorry to ask you.
No, that's completely fine. I appreciate the question. That's why I've given you a moment to read when I stop talking finally. So ideally, we'll have some consolidated challenges so that we've identified here, particularly in the first, so immediate and second level challenges. And then we will have identified, these are blank right now, these sticky notes, some actions that reflect the challenges that we've identified together.
So we're taking everything above the consolidated line and moving it down into the categories that we think it should sit in.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
The moving that will happen, that can happen by us. So for the moment, we're just, it's just okay to read it, and I will be helping with moving the stickies into the right box.
Yeah, we won't start fighting over stickies and dragging them up and down.
We were a little bit concerned about that.
Yeah, it's like swapping cards on Christmas presents.
Can I give you about 30 more seconds and then we'll move on? Okay. I hope you've had a chance to get sort of an overview now. I'm going to show this part of my screen for the moment. I'm hoping that this is, if you want to look on your own screen and other aspects so you can move around, that's completely fine. But what I'm showing here is all of the consolidated, the challenges that we had that we would like to place. And if it's okay with you, I would certainly start. Yannick, I would let you do this, I guess. But these two, anyway, were the two that appeared as top priorities for everybody. Yannick, maybe do you want to move the other ones over that appeared for a second level category or second level challenges into the second level? That's super. And then some of them are a little bit unclear. And I guess what we would like, first of all, is to get to understand if there's agreement with this. And maybe while Yannick is doing that, whoops, he's almost done. I'd like to know if there are any comments or questions about this, and maybe if you wouldn't mind, I don't know if you have a hand raising function. I can't see it myself, unfortunately, if there is. So either you need to say something out loud or show your camera so I can see your face, and I'll work with that.
It's under reactions, Bonnie. If everyone looks under reactions on Zoom, you'll see it. Raise hand.
Yeah, thank you
I'll do
very
it.
much.
There we go. I'll do it now. There we go.
Yeah, it looks a little different when I'm sharing my screen and then I'm trying to find everybody at the same time. Just a moment. So my reactions are...
Sometimes as host, you won't be able to see the raise hand because you don't need to.
That's what I was thinking, that it's out there, but I simply can't see it. Now, Nicola, it looks like he's clapping, but I'm assuming that's a raised hand. Take it at that.
Yeah, I did both actually, because and when you say you clap, I mean you cannot unclap before a few seconds, so that's why you saw this. I'm just surprised that the data sharing privacy concerns is only appearing on public sector and other influencer, if I'm right, on the first column on the top privacy aspect. And I'm just wondering if we do have the same idea of what the data we're supposed to share. I mean, when we talk about MDS, we have just very, very few privacy data just about GPS tracks. So maybe there's just not the same understanding, because for me as a private sector, there is no way to share my customer list to the city or someone else. And I have a subject on the GPS tracks, which is quite specific, and maybe just for Europe, where they consider this like privacy data. So I'm just not sure that we share that same understanding.
It's a fair question, I think. It's maybe sometimes different understandings about what that means could be part of what the problem is here. That's something that because I think it was the public sector and the other influence, it's a big problem, and maybe you and the private sector say it's not really a problem because it's not possible, or there's only limited data. Does anybody else want to address that question about data sharing?
Just to add, because on the same times, we are all agreed that there is kind of lack of willingness to many private sector actors to share data with public sector. So we don't have, if we don't have the same understanding, we cannot agree. And we don't have the same concern, because for them it's just privacy. For others, kind of, for me, for example, the problem is much more about competition. Right now, because of European directive, I need to share a lot of data about my offer. With my offer, you can know how many trips I do, etc., etc. So that's interesting for one of my competitors to understand better where I'm successful. So that's my concern. It's not about privacy, because I won't share anything about the privacy data.
The privacy data. So the question is then also who you're sharing it with, because there are different levels here. This data sharing creates privacy concerns. So maybe I'll even ask one of my Gecko colleagues to if you can clarify more which data sharing in which direction is intended. Is this by private sector operator sharing with the public sector? Yannick, I'll ask you because I can see your face right now if you want to, if you're able to address that, but you're muted.
And I'm back, but just repeat the question, sorry.
I was actually asking the question to Yannick and my other Gecko colleagues to be clear about the data sharing, where the concerns are, if this or this where the data sharing is. Is it private companies sharing data with the public sector that's intended?
I believe that was the case. Yes, it's private companies who share their data and make it public with the public sector then, which was originally intended behind the statement.
So from what Nicolas says, then that's not really an issue?
Well, that's an issue, just two subject difference, privacy concerns and the problem sharing data from private players to public actors. Just if we don't have the same understanding of which data we're talking about, that would be complicated to hold this.
I see there's some other hand raised also for this point to come in.
Okay.
So I think Ayang was first.
Hi, yeah, I thought I'd just share a bit also because I forgot to mention in my intro that also part of sharing with Gecko was the data sharing work that we did last year. I just want to share on, so the definition of data is very important because, especially in public transport, it ranges things like to operational data, to infrastructure data, to and obviously mobility data or customer data. So that is quite important to define. But also one of the challenge that I've been faced as well, because currently I'm drafting the policy brief, I just wanted to share with you all, is that I think it's also culturally, it seems to some kind of cultural, or depending how data sharing is being discussed in your respective cities, because I had some very strong pushback on thinking sharing, like, so as soon as you mentioned sharing, it was not very positive because people would think sharing means for free. So there is also that misconception about sharing, is data sharing leading to open data? So that was something I had to be very careful about. So just to share, just thought I'd share that point with you. If you want to define that data sharing, is there a condition? Is it unconditional sharing, or you're talking as long as any data exchange is considered sharing? So just wanted to share that point.
Thank you, Gayang. That's an important point as well. I think maybe what Nicola has pointed out and you've sort of addressed to a certain extent is we need to take this point apart significantly. So by defining data sharing in the first place, and also defining data and defining sharing, those are the two aspects that need to be addressed, I would say, in that. I've put notes on there, and I would say if anybody wants to, feel free to add notes to anything that that you think requires it. So I'll say thank you for that. We've got, I see a few, the last ones here, Yannick, that you haven't put anywhere. Is this because it wasn't clear where they belong?
That's because either they had two in a particular stakeholder category and maybe one was somewhere else or on the border between the two, so they could be discussed.
Okay. I almost hesitate to address this because I see data sharing here immediately. I'm looking at number 2, the lack of technical standards creates a barrier to data sharing between public and private sectors or actors. Can we have some takers on that? Where do you think this belongs? Is it a top priority? Is it a second level priority? And for some reason, I don't seem to be able to see hands, so I'm not sure what's going on, but
yes, we do have another hand up. So from Andrew.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, from projects in which I'm leading in Hong Kong now and in Ho Chi Minh and in London, it seems that it's more expensive to do this without standards in place. Standards enable scalability, of course, when you have a centralized regime. So standards help, but they do not preclude data sharing. So I'd see this as an important but not an immediate concern in that case.
Okay, important but not immediate concern. Any other takers on that? Agreement or disagreement?
Thomas?
Yeah, maybe in connection with the general data sharing and privacy concern question, because I think they're quite interlinked. If you're looking at current practice, or if you're looking at business cases of mobility operators and service providers, then it appears that the selling of augmented data towards the public sector may be part of the business model, and the public sector should really be careful considering whether we should accept that or not, because the data that is produced on the basis of public infrastructure and the basis that public data on transport scheduling, infrastructure, etc., is made available to this market mostly for free. So shouldn't there be an automated link on reciprocity of certain insights that have a public value back to the public sector for free? That should be, I believe, the first question. And then the second is, obviously, that needs to adhere to any kind of privacy rules, GDPR, etc., that is coming up. I think that is a given. So the argument from the private sector that data sharing is privacy sensitive does not hold as long as the legislation is not there to support it. So I believe that this sharing of data, or this reciprocity of data, is privacy sensitive. Seems to me like a bit of an excuse to overprotect data which may have a commercial value later on. So that's the connection there. And then I would agree with Andrew that the standard is rather the technical solution to facilitate all of this, but you can share data without a technical standard. So we should be discussing what data the public sector wants, and how the public sector may use that data, because GDPR allows us to collect data, also personal data, if we have a reason to use it, and if the reason we use it for and the way we use it for are apparent to the customer, so or the citizens in wider sense in that case. So the technical standard would just be to allow this data sharing to be probably more automated, more effective, as Andrew already said. So I would say that the blue number 2 should rather be a follow-up to the actual discussion of how data reciprocity should be looking, and what kind of data should be covered by it.
Okay. So I just called this a follow-up to number 3. So these two, you would say, belong together. And I can see we've got masses of comments being gathered on point number 3, which is super interesting and really helpful to be able to take this apart a little bit more. So can we place this number 3 then? As I said, we had really different views on this, but where does it, is it a top priority? I guess addressing the data issue maybe in general, and then taking it apart in its various components. Would that be in our top priority list, dealing with the issues around it?
We have a hand up from Gayang.
I don't know why I don't see them. Thank you, Yannick. Go ahead, Gayang.
Sorry, I put my hand up early in terms of I'm going to make another point, but if you want to finish on your point first, and then I thought it was just an observation I observed and wanted to bring a point about the sustainability of the new mobility services.
I think we're okay. My question to the world is, can we put this number 3 with all of its comments on it in the top priority? And then number 2 as a follow-up to that in the second priority? I've got a thumbs up from
I think so.
Carol anyway. Yeah, feel free to give us a thumbs up if you want. I don't actually think there's a thumbs down button. So you have to either be, we only take positive responses. Okay. What about this number 8? I think I saw a comment about this elsewhere, but the lack of technical competence in the public sector can lead to false expectations about the potential of new technology. So this is calling into question the competences in the public sector about even dealing with this, the issues around new mobility. Is this a top priority to be dealt with?
We have multiple hands raised now.
Sorry, Yannick, you have to take on this moderation. I can't see them all.
I think it started with Michael, so please.
From the public sector?
Yeah, from the public sector. I will not comment on the question of competence in the public sector. Simply a critical remark still to the data sharing. I experience here that the role of the data that we receive from sharing operators is by far overestimated. That might be interesting for academia or some studies, but for our transport planning, the value is small. I don't want to say that there's no value, but it's comparatively small. We get the data, for instance, the free-floating operators of car sharing and scooters, they cover a very, very small part of the city. And so that data is interesting, but not more. You cannot build a real SGMP planning on that. So this is a little bit artificial discussion from my point of view, or overestimated. And the question of competence is definitely interesting. And there is a comment that I put that there's a lot of false promises and false expectations in the world, especially concerning autonomous transport. And it's not easy to deal with that. It's coming from the private sector. There's a lot of technology development and research, but this is usually not related to in any way to transport planning. So some critical remarks, and I said, of course, more competence is necessary.
Okay,
but
I see.
It's still false expectations and false promises by the private sector.
I can see a thumbs up from Thomas on that. It was interesting. That's sort of maybe the counterpoint, but if the technical competence is there, maybe that helps you to understand the false promises. Maybe is that, do you know what I mean? You sort of fall into the trap of not understanding. You're saying, oh, what a great product. It's being sold to you because you're not able to understand the issues behind it. Is that?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's the point always when it comes to autonomous transport readiness of cities. And then I say, what about the city readiness of autonomous transport? I raised that issue a number of times, but I can see that the community is very split about this approach. So to raise more questions and not just say, oh, there's new technology and it will solve the problem. Just to be a bit more critical, of course, this requires also competence. That's true. But it's not just competence in the meaning, oh, we have to understand what's going on, but we have to really critically review what's going on and what's coming up. And I think this makes the difference.
I think that's what it's about. And in fact, I remember the first time talking about this was with Thomas in London at our workshop, and it's stuck in my mind too. But I think that's exactly what was intended, Thomas, if I remember, that you're able to ask the critical questions.
Can I react on that real quick? I had my hand up as well. I don't know if I'm the next one.
Go for it. I'm sorry, I can't see the hands. I don't know what's going on, but go ahead.
Maybe you can see it if you open the participation list. Then you can see it pop up sometimes.
Thank you.
The hands there. But anyways, what I wanted to say is that I completely agree with Michael's comment, and I believe that these false expectations rather stem from bad sales pitches or false sales pitches from private operators, rather than a lack of understanding. What I would suggest in this whole discussion of technical competence and public sector evaluation is rather to turn it around. At the moment, the private sector comes with a new product, with a new technology, and says, this is how we're going to solve your problem. But the city doesn't even know that this problem that this operator is solving actually existed. So it should be the other way around. It should be the public sector defining what a city's or region's problems are. And then there's this proper German word, Bringschuld. I can't really translate that, but it's kind of the one that is supposed to bring the evidence to the table. That should be the private sector. Bringing the evidence, showing that their solution will actually help relieve the city from its problems. So on the one side, the competence in the public sector doesn't need to be that big if we are able to define what our problems are and put the evidence question to the private sector, who will need to show us that that technology helps with our problem and how it will. But that's the difficulty at the moment, because we're overrun by new technologies, by new products from the private sector, and can't kind of estimate what of it is true and false and how will it actually play out.
I'll just throw in a comment just for your awareness. This is one in a series of 6 sessions that we've got going on, and we couldn't do this in the standard workshop format, and we know we couldn't get people for 3 full days. So just to say, we have different people in different discussions, and we were having discussions yesterday about conflicting and converging interests between the private and the public sector. So what you're saying feeds into that, and we're certainly taking that sort of in this context together. So I'm sorry that not everybody gets to be a part of all of the conversations. I wish you could, but you're sort of supporting some of the discussions we had yesterday that go along in that direction. So we appreciate that. I'm going to say one other thing. Yannick and I got some background discussions going on, and this is a much more interesting and taking more time than we expected. We've just decided to throw out the action part here, and we have another session this afternoon, and we're going to give this job to them. So I think this discussion we're having is important. So we'd like to continue it sort of critically looking at the challenges and trying to place them. So just so you're aware, we're skipping the action part and focusing entirely on these, the challenges and the issues around them. So just wanted to put that out there. We're not going to manage all that we thought we could, but that's okay. Okay, who else do we have on the list that I'm not seeing that would like to? Aha, I can see hands now.
Nicola would like to say give some input.
Yeah, I just would like to share with you a very recent experience with Métropole de Lyon, which has adopted a new regulation for car sharing, which was an adaptation of something already existing. And they add a new article mentioning the MDS, which is quite an interesting standard to try to rule better new mobilities. But they have not just concrete and precise idea of what the objectives of this, except ruling, and of if the car sharer involved in that consent by that regulation were able to share the data asked by the authority. And finally, we had a meeting with them after the regulation was adopted by the local committee, Métropole de Lyon. And we had that weird discussion to say concretely how we will be able to answer to that concern from the local authorities. For me, it's kind of mix of the people at the Métropole de Lyon didn't have all the skills to understand what the MDS, what's in it, and what I can expect from it. And they didn't, that another subject in the top priority, which was about regulation, are not discussed or are not included. Number 22, new mobility provider are not included in the creation of regulation that directly affect the product. That's exactly what happened. And I mean, that for me, that's a good example of that two issues, which are lack of understanding of competencies on one part, and the fact that they did not include the new mobility providers. And at the end, the result that maybe the city had that weird feeling that private players didn't want to share, didn't have that willingness to share data with the local authorities, but just MDS is just huge and cannot expect from startups to respect it from one day to another in 6 months. That's why the delay they put in the regulation, which is just I don't have the developers at Community, which is big startup, let's say, no, it's no company, to respect MDS within 6 months. So just a good example to illustrate that different issues. My content just that we have different concerns on top priority, but for me that are not, they are opposing themselves. I don't know if it's correct English.
I could see all sorts of issues coming together in this with regard to competence and who's involved, what Thomas called the Bringschuld, so having to demonstrate that what you're offering is in fact valuable to the city anyway, which would give you the right to participate in the creation of the regulation. So I can see all of this sort of coming together from different angles, but I'll put that out and see if anybody else would like to comment on it. I see your hand up, Gayang. I also see a comment in the chat. I'm not sure. Do you want to tell us?
Hi. No, I thought just in case you don't get around to it, I know everyone wants to have a share, but that was just what my point was. And when because I didn't see a point about the sustainability of these services in the challenges, so I'm not sure if this was discussed. But just wanted to share when I was talking about on demand and especially in Asia region, this was one of the comment that I received that I thought to share about not every authority feels or don't know how sustainable they are, therefore they're not sure if they should invest or to regulate, etc. But you know, so there's a relation of that, whether then for them is it worth to invest a team or competency into regulating when they might just come and go, and things in public sector tends to move slowly, so they're not as agile as tech companies, which they are aware of, but I think that's just one of the challenge there for the public sector.
Yeah, which is interesting too, and maybe what you sort of point out here is that there are different challenges for different sectors, so that clearly is something for the public sector, and again, it's something that's come up before within the project, this idea of, is it even worth it? Maybe we should just let this go because it's probably going to be gone before we've managed to get a regulation together for it. So to try and understand how sustainable or lasting a given service is. I can't believe we're at the, is it really, we're an hour and a half gone, aren't we? Okay, we have to wrap up. Can I just, I'm going to try a quick and dirty solutions here and see if we can do this. Number 18, regulations often exist only in the local language, making them inaccessible to others. Top priority, can we have some reaction, either a hand up or something? Where would you put this in a top priority? I see one hand. Apparently not. Okay, if I look at number 17, regulations that vary from city to city make it difficult for new mobility operators to transfer or scale up their solutions. I see one hand for that, so is it a top priority?
I just react to that.
Go ahead, Thomas.
Together with Polis and UITP, EMTA has actually published a paper or a kind of discussion piece towards the European Commission on this whole mass discussion. And interestingly, we've noticed that, especially in the European perspective, working with principles that should be adhered in all situations, rather than standardizing all situations, works a lot better. So we should harmonize on a principle level, kind of on who does what and how should things in a kind of principled way look like, but then leave the very local regulation to the local context conditions, because these really do matter. And not every city is the same, not every metropolitan area is the same. So these local differences need to be imprinted in the local regulation. So I would make this a top priority, but maybe change it towards not standardizing it or making it all harmonious, but rather working with principles that everybody should adhere to.
Yep. Thank you very much.
I support that view. I mean, having national observatories or even handbooks, which are developed by central government and then distributed regionally, can actually make a lot of difference.
But does that mean then that the regulations are indeed centralized, Andrew, or did I misunderstand that?
I don't know, regulations I think would be, but in many places like the US, for example, there's countries where there's much more federal structure, like in parts of Europe, then it is possible at least to have minimum requirements to enable, for example, interoperability. And then above the minimum requirements, then you have discretion. So that's one way of structuring that.
Okay, that's a little bit different, I would say. From Thomas, I sort of hear it as a top-down, as in setting principles, and then it's developed at the city, whereas you're saying you set a basic level and then they can go above and beyond that.
No, I think they have to be consistent with, I mean, the principles apply regardless, so that's the starting point. And then in terms of the deliverability, you define minimum requirements, which enable, for example, interregional data sharing is one reason for that, or privacy, which has to reflect statutory requirements. So they're the minimum requirements. And then above that, you could actually describe these additional things that you think are necessary. And then above that, you just provide guidance in any case, rather than prescriptive requirements.
Yeah.
And that can be done through code of conduct, it can be done through guidance notes, it can be done through handbooks, for example, best practice guides, etc. So that actually helps with capacity building at a local level.
So working at this in several different levels or stages, not as one unified whole.
Yeah, otherwise you're going to get small governments to get left behind. You know, small city governments will not have that capacity. They rely upon central government or large neighbours to drive their approach.
Yeah.
So centralisation of some parts actually makes a lot of sense in terms of just economies of scale.
Exactly. Yeah, no, your point is taken, though, the different aspects to be taken into account, whether it be the small scale of something and the lack of capacity, or I think you've just described it, I won't say it all again, and I'm also looking at the clock. Okay, what I would say, first of all, is that this didn't run very much as we expected. It happens sometimes, we have to adapt, which we're doing. And I think what the key point of this is that we have all sorts of comments on the general challenges that we've addressed so far, which will help us to, I think, sort of tease out what the important details are. So we'll be doing a bit of adapting with this, and luckily we do have a second workshop that's focusing on this afternoon, so we're going to give them a task that builds on what you've given us here as a starting point. So the afternoon group will have a different task than you have, but I hate to end the conversation because it's just really interesting, and we appreciate the inputs that you're bringing in, also the comments that are being added. It's very helpful for us. I'm not sure how much I can do to actually wrap this all up, other than to say you sort of torn things apart and we're putting it together in a different order right now. And thank you for your willingness to do that. I think some of you will be seeing again tomorrow, either in the recommendation session and or sort of the wrap up. If you come back tomorrow afternoon for our wrap-up session, then you will find out, or you'll see what we actually ended up doing with this. So we'll be providing an overview of all of the sessions and what's come out here. So I think that might be worth seeing. If you're in Asia, I know that's really late, and I'm sorry about that. We couldn't manage all of our audiences, but that's what's happening tomorrow. So I'll just say one more time, thank you to all of you for your participation and your thoughts. We've got them in the comment box as well as in the Miro board. So we'll be taking all of that into account and moving forward with it. Any comments or questions? If not, I'll end this with a big thank you again to everybody. Have a good day.
Thanks, Bonnie. It's a pleasure.
Thanks, Bonnie. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Okay. That was super interesting.
Yes.
And really helpful, but we're going to have to, just for those that were there, I said it out loud, but Yannick and I had a little back and forth in between when it was pretty clear that we weren't going to get into the actions, just with the comments on the challenges, and particularly the data thing, which has got about a dozen comments on it right there. So, I mean, one of the main things that's bringing out to us is that needs to be taken apart much more carefully with some definitions, which I'm always a big fan of definitions anyway. So I think that's, if we have to say what is meant by data, what is meant by sharing, with the comments as to whether it's paid for or not. Yes.
Yeah, everyone kind of poured into the data sharing one.
Yeah, see that. That, and I think number 8 was quite popular for comments as well with this technical competence stuff, which I think, I mean, it's totally fair comments. And you can see how like the interrelation of, you know, the big tech ideas, we've got something to sell, and you need to be able to ask the questions to make sure that it's really something you want. Yeah, all I can say is good luck, Yannick. You're the one that has to put this all together in the deliverable. Yeah, I'm just trying to think. Yannick, I think it would be helpful if you and I had another meeting in between to try and sort of replan what we'll do for this afternoon. I'm not sure what your timing is like for the day.
Let me just check. I think for me it's okay. I mean, I'm just opening my Outlook because I closed it to check my calendar.
Yeah.
But from what I remember, I think I was free between the two.
Yeah, I think I'm quite okay. I know I have a couple of other things I wanted to get done in between, but maybe can we meet at, say, 2 o'clock? And ideally sort of in, maybe 1 o'clock?
Yes, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've got a couple other things I need to do in between, and then, but I will try and take a look at all the comments in between, and if you could do it as well, that'd be super, and then we can. Yep. try and see how, so what we'll be doing basically is summarizing what we got here and then seeing what we get for actions based on this then.
Mm-hmm.
Action number 1 seems to be clear definitions of data and sharing to me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then I guess we'll just say thanks everybody. Yannick, I'll see you at 1 o'clock, and anybody else that's joining us, I guess sort of shortly before 3, or no, 3:30 we start, right?
3:30, yes.
3:30, okay. So Yannick, I'll send you an invitation for 1 o'clock then, yeah?
Okay, okay. Speak then.
Cool. Thanks everybody.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
The chat, Bonnie.